Welcome back to my channel everyone. Today let's continue with James and Deep's story. Is it worth it for James to give up his $500,000 company to be with Lytudiep? The morning in the small mountain town was calm, filled with the quiet hum of life. Sunlight slipped through the trees, touching gently on Deep's hair as she tied little Nee's ribbon. The smell of fresh rice rolls filled the air, and James sat nearby, watching them with a kind of stillness that only comes when someone is memorizing happiness. Yet his eyes were distant, like a man who had already made a decision he didn't want to face. "Deep," he said softly, "if one day I have to leave, would you be angry with me?" She paused, her smile fading a little. She didn't ask why, she simply looked at him, knowing that sometimes silence carries the answer you're afraid to hear. Months ago, James had walked away from a company worth $500,000 in Singapore. A company he built from nothing. He was young, successful, admired, but success had begun to taste hollow. So he left it all behind, trading luxury for the scent of wet soil. Boardrooms for laughter under tin roofs. He came to Vietnam, to Deep, and to a small girl named NHI who taught him what it meant to love without conditions. Together they dreamed of a simple life, building a small warehouse where farmers could bring their crops, living by their own hands and hearts. But one afternoon, as they were repairing a cracked wall, his phone rang. It was a voice from his past, the partner who had built the company with him. "James, everything's falling apart. Investors are pulling out. If you don't come back, we'll lose everything, hundreds of jobs, years of work." James stood still for a long time, the wind brushing dust across his shoes. He had left that world behind to find peace. Yet the world was calling him back, not for glory, but for responsibility. That night, under the warm glow of a single bulb, Deep was washing dishes while NHI slept. James came closer, his voice almost a whisper. "I have to go back." Deep froze, water dripping from her fingers. "You really want to leave?" she asked quietly. "Not for money," he said, "not for fame, but if I don't go, everything we built there will collapse. I can't let the people who trusted me lose everything. I need to finish what I started, so that one day, when I return, I'll have nothing left to regret." She didn't answer. Tears trembled on her lashes. Sometimes love isn't about keeping someone beside you. It's about letting them do what they must, even if it breaks your heart. The next morning, mist covered the valley. James packed a small suitcase. As he stepped outside, NHI ran to him, clutching his shirt. "Daddy James, where are you going?" He knelt and hugged her tight. "I'm going to work, sweetheart. When I'm done, I'll come home." Deep stood by the doorway, her hands trembling but her face calm. She didn't call out, she just watched him walk away through the fog, his figure slowly fading into the light, like a dream dissolving into day. Back in the city, James returned to a world of sharp suits and colder eyes. But this time, something inside him was different. He carried with him the memory of warm rice rolls, of a child's laughter, of Deep's quiet strength. Those memories became his compass, keeping him steady amid the noise and greed. He rebuilt the company, not for profit, but to protect the people who had once believed in him. Every deal he signed, every decision he made, he thought of them, the two souls waiting in a small house among the hills. Years passed, the company thrived again. One day, James finally came back. The road was the same, winding through fields of green, and when he reached the little house, he saw the old roof still covered in moss. Deep was sitting outside, sorting vegetables, NHI now taller, her laughter still bright. James stood there quietly for a long moment before stepping closer. She looked up, and their eyes met, no words, no explanations, just the quiet understanding of two people who had lost and found each other again. He had left not to chase wealth, but to keep his promise, to return with peace in his heart and no unfinished battles behind him. He had walked away from his home to protect the love that made it a home in the first place. Sometimes, leaving is not the end of love, it is the proof of it.